Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I'm doing a review of Rohinton Mistry, A Fine Balance. So let's get into it. So this is a book off the top 1000 list, 1000 books to read before you die by James Mustich. I had never heard of it or the author before, but I found a signed copy of it at the bookstore, which I thought was pretty neat, so I got it. And so I started to read it this year. I think it was on my 23 books to read in 2023 list. And my first impression from the very first chapter was that Rohinton Mistry's writing style is very much similar to my own. There are two writers who I think are like comparable to my own writing. They are Richard Wright, the author of Native Son, and Rohinton Mistry. We just write very similar to each other. We have the same use of dialogue, description, just all in all, our vocabulary is the same way, our sentence structure is the same way. So our writing is like clones of each other. Myself, Richard Wright, and Rohinton Mistry. So naturally, I like that. And another thing that really kind of vindicated me was I was curious about this book, so I looked it up just to see like kind of what it was not about. I didn't want to see that, but just basically what was the importance of this book because I didn't know anything about it. So I looked it up on Wikipedia, and something it said there is that this book is considered by a lot of people to be one of the 10 greatest books to ever come out of Asia. So to me that was really vindicating because since the writing style is very much like my own, like without even trying to imitate this book, this is just like how I naturally write. If critics thought this book is one of the 10 greatest books to ever come out of Asia, then I kind of think, well, hey, my writing can't be altogether that bad then if this is one of the greatest books to come out of an entire like continent. Okay, now the plot. If you don't want to know this, go ahead and skip it, but it's really just going to be kind of minor spoilers, just things you would like read off the back of the book. So if you don't want to know that, skip to the next chapter. But this book is basically a character-driven story. I won't even try to come up with the names of the characters from memory. But basically the first one you meet in like the first act is this woman who will become like a, I don't know what it's called. She's into sewing. Tailors, that's what it is. So she tailors clothing. Anyway, so the first like act of the book, or the first part of the book, is kind of showing her childhood. She has like a really oppressive brother who kind of takes like ownership of the family because the father passes away. So her brother runs everything, and so he's just kind of really tyrannical. He wants her to just kind of marry one of his friends and like marry into wealth, you know, just give her off into marriage. And she doesn't really want that. She just kind of wants to do her own thing. So she winds up becoming a tailor and kind of like not a lower class, but she kind of struggles. She works a lot. She doesn't just marry into wealth. She wants to work. She wants to be her own person. So the first act is kind of about her. Then a couple other tailors show up at her business. And so then the next act goes into those two guys, and it shows who they are. And they are basically, they are lower class people. And so the book goes into that. It shows their like early life and the persecution they go through. I think they are Muslims, maybe like Pakistani Muslims. I'm not sure about that, but the Indian like higher classes just like really persecute them a lot. So that act leads all the way up to them like getting together with the woman, the tailor, and like working for her. And then it kind of goes into a third storyline, which is like this son of a kind of like a restaurant. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's kind of more like on the frontier, kind of like the undeveloped area. And it's sort of showing like civilization's like encroachment into this like once like isolated town and this restaurant, and how that changes the once kind of small town life. And so then that storyline is about the son of that like restaurant store place. And it just goes into that. And from then on, the book kind of reverts between all of these storylines. So those are the major characters of the story. So there's really not much I can say as to like the actual plot of the book. I mean, all you're really doing is just following these characters. So it's a character-driven story. So it's not like a real like plot-based story. So reading this book, the first 75 pages or so, I was really liking it and thought, of course, this would be a 5-star book. How could I give it any less than that? Because it's basically like reading one of my own books. So I was really liking it at first, but as it was going on, I was kind of just getting a little bit bored, waiting for something to happen, just wanting some kind of plot point to develop, because it's just really character driven. And because of that, I don't really know like what it's building toward. It's just kind of, you follow these characters day after day or whatever, year after year. But what is really happening in the grand scheme of things? What is this all leading toward? I wasn't getting that. And this book is pretty big. It's like, I don't know how many pages, but somewhere around like 800 pages or so. So just reading the book about, getting 100 pages in, I was still thinking, what is this book even going to be about? I mean, is there going to be like a war that happens? Is there going to be a revolution? Is this a love story? I mean, what's going on? So that was kind of making me a little bit bored, tired of reading the book, just wanting something to happen. And when it would switch point of views, it would like start all over again. So, oh, now here's this other character we have to introduce and we have to get to know them. And so I was just getting tired of the book. The longer it went on, the less I was beginning to like it. So after about 100 pages, I began to think, just because the plot is taking so long, since it's such a wordy book, such a long book, maybe it's just going to be a 4-star book. So I kept reading and read another 100 pages. So I get into 200 pages and then like 250 pages. And by then I'm definitely thinking, I kind of like his writing style. It's very much like my own, so I'm very partial to it. I like the storytelling. I like basically the way he writes characters. But I was just not really liking it in terms of the absent plot and thinking the book is just too long. So just wanting something to happen, or thinking, hey, if nothing is going to happen, then you should probably trim down on some of these and trim the book down by like 300 pages. After reading around 250 pages, I just reached a point where I didn't really want to read any more of the book. And so one time when I picked it up and tried to read it, I just really didn't care anymore. So at that point, about 250 pages in, probably around 30–40% into the book, I just decided to DNF it and look up the summary online to see just what else happens in the story. And really, I am glad I did that. And the main reason is, and I haven't touched on this yet, the story is just kind of depressing because, I mean, a lot of bad things happen to the characters. A lot of misfortunes befall the characters. Every single one of them, just kind of throughout. And all of the other characters in the book are just kind of unlikable, and they just kind of serve to make our main characters miserable. So I like the main characters pretty well. They're all pretty well likable, I guess. I mean, I like reading about them. I kind of root for them. So I like the main characters, but every other character in the book is just kind of I don't know how to say, but they just serve to cause misfortune for the main characters. So the book is just kind of filled with tragedy and also things that make me not like either Muslims or especially Indians. Like reading this book, I'm just like thinking, I hate this culture, I hate this country, I hate these people. They are so racist, they're so classist, they're like hateful toward religion, they're hateful toward other ethnicities, they're hateful toward like poor people. These are just such hateful, unlikable people, like all of them, except for kind of the main characters. And that's really throughout the book. It's just more and more, every single character just causes trouble, causes problems, and is unlikable. They're racist, they're sexist, they're whatever. They're look down on poor people. They're just altogether unlikable, barbaric people. Reading this book, it just made me really dislike like this whole region, like especially India. I mean, just their culture, their like racist attitudes, their classist attitudes. They're looking down on poor people, looking down on like immigrants and Pakistanis and Muslims or whatever. And just all in all, it was just unlikable. So it's just altogether kind of a depressing read. So when I looked up the summary online on Wikipedia to see what else happened in the book, like the final, I don't know, 400 pages or whatever, it was really just more of the same thing, and it was all just really miserable. So really, for like every character in the book, it just ends up miserable for them. It's kind of just a tragedy, like just nothing but bad stuff befalls them, like really bad stuff. So I'm kind of glad I didn't read it for that reason. Like, I was kind of thinking as I was reading it, well, like something good happens, right? No. So when I found that out, I actually kind of thought it funny in a way, because I always describe my books as like very tragic. Like a lot of bad things happen in the end, like a lot of the main characters die, and especially like some of the protagonists die or whatever, or they lose. So I've always thought my books are kind of depressing in the end. They have like bad endings. So when this one I saw just had an altogether bad ending, I was just kind of like, there's just another way we're similar. We just have real tragic stories. Where I differ from Rohinton Mistry is I at least try to have more of a plot in my books. For this book, I think it's more character driven. So that's all you're doing is just following around the different characters. You're not really leading to anything that you know of. So I don't really do that. I try to at least have something happen leading towards something. Rohinton Mistry does not really. The other thing is, even though I definitely have a lot of tragedy in my books, I try to also sprinkle in a lot of humor, as well as also just characters who are likable, I think. So I don't just have like my main character as the good guy and everyone else is bad and unlikable or whatever. I try to have a diverse cast where you don't know exactly if someone's going to be a real good character or a bad character or whatever. And I also try to inject a lot of humor into places. So even though I may have very dark or depressing things, I also have some things that I at least think are humorous. So the two things I guess that I would say could have redeemed the book for me, I mean, of course, just trimming down on the word count. I mean, I said 300 pages, maybe just getting rid of like 200 pages, even maybe just 100 pages would have helped a bit. The other thing I think is just having something more like to make readers happy, like inject some more light into this book, not just tragedies befalling everyone and just everyone being unlikable or racist or classist or whatever. Have more things that really endear me to the characters and endear me to the culture. I mean, you have this whole country of like, I don't know, 1 billion people or 2 billion people or however many people live in India, and every single one of them is really unlikable. So why, when you have 1 billion people or whatever, can't you have more characters who are just like really fun to read about and nice characters and nice people? That would have made me like this book more, as well as of course like having more of a plot. But I mean, Rohinton Mistry could have gotten away with just writing a character-based story, because he is a good writer, I think, and I like his characters. It's just so altogether depressing and everyone's unlikable. So that dragged the book down for me, and it's so long, I just got tired of reading it. So in the first 7,500 pages, I was thinking 5-star book. Between 100 pages and 200 pages, I was thinking, probably 4 stars. After 200 and 250 pages or so, when I DNF the book, I just kind of think I can't really justify giving it 4 stars anymore, because I only read really like 40% of the book and it's just altogether depressing. So it's not really 4-star material. So for the final rating, I think I gotta give it 3 stars. I would still recommend it, I guess, just because the writing is good. And again, so much like my own, so kind of a shameless plug there, I guess. So he's a good writer, a good storyteller and all that. So it's worth reading, but I just had problems with it. So it's 3 stars. So it kind of fades in the end. So it's definitely not a book I tell people like rush out and read it, unfortunately. So it just kind of falls into a category of, if you're at the library and you're looking for books and you can't really find much and you see this book, it's not too bad. It's definitely worth reading. Would I say go out and buy a copy? No. If you're at the bookstore and you see this book for just like $10 or whatever, would I recommend it then? Sure. When I was about, I don't know, 150, 200 pages into this book and still thinking I was liking Rohinton Mistry before I DNF'd this book, I was at the bookstore and I saw more books by Rohinton Mistry. So I actually got them, and I still will probably plan to read these. And one good thing is these books are much shorter than A Fine Balance. So the books I got are Such a Long Journey. This was Rohinton Mistry's first novel, as well as Family Matters. I think this may have been, I do not know. I think this was his third novel. I think A Fine Balance was his second. I don't know, I may have that switched around. But I think this was his third novel, so Family Matters. So definitely between them, I would read Such a Long Journey first, since it's his first book. They will probably slide down my to read list a little bit, but I am still definitely interested in reading them and seeing if, again, our style is very similar, or if our style is more similar just in this book or whatever. And also it'd be a good way to see if he could redeem himself, just because I think this book is so long. Maybe he was trying to write it to be a literary classic, where he's trying to write this to be this masterpiece book, and because of it, if he inflated the word count because of that. So I wonder if these books are just better written, just because he's not trying to really drag it out for critics, if he's just trying to tell a good story, which I think he's very capable of. So also reading his first book, I mean, a lot of writers, their first books aren't very good, so I'm going to be curious to see how it compares with A Fine Balance especially. So just curious to see if I will potentially like this book more than A Fine Balance, or if I'll think, he doesn't have all of his talents yet in this book, so A Fine Balance is still better. And then of course read Family Matters, which I hope is the third book. Oh, I should have just checked out the fiction by Rohinton Mistry. Tales from Firozabad in 1987. I think that's just short stories. Such a Long Journey, his first novel. A Fine Balance, his second novel, published in 1995. Family Matters, third novel. And this still has only been the last thing he's written. So this was 2002 this was published, I think. And he hasn't written any books since then. I think he lives in Canada currently, and I kind of wish I could talk to this guy just because our writing is so similar. So I don't know, it just seems like, a brother from another mother kind of thing. So it's I kind of wish I could meet or talk to Rohinton Mistry. And I also still do like that I have a signed copy of A Fine Balance, since this is the book off the top 1000 list, and it's called one of the 10 greatest books to come out of Asia. So I like that I have a signed copy of that. That is really neat. But anyway, that will do it for the review. So 3 stars for A Fine Balance. It does fall into recommended read territory, but it's also kind of a not too enthusiastic recommended read. So it's kind of more just, if you see a copy of the library, definitely worth picking up. Or if you see any other books by Rohinton Mistry, I think just based on the writing, and again being partial to it, it's not a bad pickup. So again, I've got those other books. So that tells you I do definitely kind of like Rohinton Mistry. I like his writing style. I like some of his characters. But the book altogether was just too long. It didn't really have too much of a plot that was pushing it along that makes me want to stay on board reading. And I forgot what the first thing I said. But anyway, real depressing story and just kind of too long. So that kind of dragged the book down for me. But still recommended read territory. Anyway, that is it. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye!